What we're looking at today is regions. Now you've actually got 3 different topics and objectives that we're going to cover today. The first is regions. This lesson is a lot of Mod Podge of kind of some of the Misc concepts that we've looked at. But your essential question, I tried to group it all together the best I could. The best essential question I could come up with was, what are the various regions and why do we need geospatial technology? Okay, those are the 2 main points that we're going to be looking at. First off, I want to identify what the cultural landscape looks like. There's 3 different regions that we're going to talk about within the cultural landscape. The first of which is a formal region. You'll notice what a formal region, what the definition is that it's a region that has to be defined. It has to be proven. The easiest example of that is like a political map of a country because you have the borders which are proven and everybody knows they exist. Also, it can be shared characteristics of a region. For example, like in the United States, in the central portion of the United States, you have what's called the Corn Belt. You can literally look at a county-by-county map of the United States based on corn production, and you can determine that the Corn Belt is right there. The next type of region is a functional or a nodal region. Functional region is probably what you'll remember from world geography. Nodal region is talking about a region that has a center point that's connected some way. Now it also has a function and has a use, hence the term functional, but for our purposes the nodal portion is what we need to remember more than anything. It has a central focus. That central focus ties it all together. The best example, because pizza is awesome, is a Pizza Hut delivery map. You've got all these different Pizza Huts. If I live in the Southwest and I call a Pizza Hut in the northeast of town, they're not going to deliver to me because their functional region is up here. The functional region of the southwestern portion is the region is the Pizza Hut that I need to call. The next type of region is a perceptual region, and it's one based off of perceptions or ideas or opinions about a place. The easiest way to remember this and to think about it is with the key term mental map. What a mental map is it's your mental image of a place. It's what you remember about a place. So when you're thinking about your school, you're probably thinking, man, my school is great. But then when somebody across town is thinking about your school, they're probably thinking, man, they kind of stink. Key term is a review from the previous section of notes. It's talking about regionalization. Inside of regionalization, the idea of putting things, people, places, whatever, putting this together, that's what's referred to as regionalization. The first key term in regionalization is regionalism. I told you the example about coexisting. You've probably seen this bumper sticker before. It's talking about living together. This is talking about a group of people that are in a region together that all have different cultural characteristics. It's very diverse, but they're living together. That's regionalism, okay? People put together, they might not have all the same shared characteristic, but there's pockets of shared characteristics within it. And a good example of that is when a country has a lot of different religions in it, and it's living together. The next type of regionalization that I want to get at is sectionalism. This is an extreme devotion to local culture. The example that I always use is like the American Civil War, when you had the North and you had the South. You had sectionalism exist, and because of that sectionalism, it eventually led to 2 different countries, a breakaway, which led to the American Civil War, which of course brought it all back together again, but it was all because of that extreme devotion to the local culture. And then you have the idea of irredentism. This is when, for example, country A feels like there's an ethnic group in this area, country B. They feel like since this is a local ethnic group that they have the right to go out and get this area and make it their own. Okay, that is irredentism, the idea that they're not here, but they're part of me, so I'm going to go out and get them. For example, Russia and Ukraine. Switching gears here, and we're talking about geospatial technology. This is your second main objective. What one aspect of geospatial technology is a geographic information system, also known as GIS. The key thing you need to know about GIS is its layers. It's looking at a bunch of different maps and it's combining those maps down onto one specific area. Okay? For example, if I took the political map of Texas with all the roads and I took the physical map of Texas, physical features map with the rivers and the mountains, I did my best. I'm not an artist. And then if I took like a climate map or a weather pattern map that showed weather, so I've got one big cloud here in central Texas, and I combined them all down, this would be a GIS. Now, for it to be a geographic information system, you need to have some interactive portion of it. And that's what this Doppler radar is. That's the interactive portion. But it's taking all these different maps and it's showing you all of that in one aspect. You see GIS all the time when you're looking at the weather, when you watch the news and you see the weather, because it's showing you roads and cities and physical features. Some of it even shows you vegetation. and then you've got the weather patterns. And a lot of times in Texas, you don't see a weather pattern, but it's still a GIS because it's supposed to show you a weather pattern. This key term from geospatial technology is remote sensing. This is when you use satellites. These satellites take a bunch of different pictures of Earth's surface, very small pictures which are referred to as pixels, and it's a compilation of all these different pixels that come together to create one big image. Okay, Google Earth is an example of a remote sensing because it's taking a lot of different pictures. The satellites are hundreds and thousands of miles away, and so you're taking all these small images of Earth and it's putting it together as pixels. The reason we have remote sensing is to map the changing distribution of a wide variety of features. Some common uses of remote sensing is looking at like agriculture and how agriculture is spreading, maybe where things are being grown by those satellite images, maybe measuring drought, seeing the waters shrink, like lakes and freshwater sources and rivers even dry up, seeing that shrink, and also to map urban sprawl, which will be in your last unit of study, but urban sprawl is talking about that city moving and what it looks like, not literally packing up and moving, but like spreading out, sprawling, and what that looks like. Now, essentially, when you take remote sensing, essentially you get a grid, because you're putting all of these different pixels together to make one big image. So it's taking all these small pictures of all these pixels, and it's coming together for one big image. Aspect of geospatial technology is global positioning systems, also known as GPS. A lot of you now may think of it as either Google or Siri because you just ask, hey Google, or hey Siri, how do I get to this place? But it's using global positioning systems to give you that direction. Now, the United States military has 24 satellites in orbit, and there are 3 satellites in reserve in case something happens to one of these. There are tracking stations all over the earth that can track, that the United States military has, that can track these 27, essentially, satellites at all times. And then you have a receiver on Earth that can position and track at least 4 of these satellites at one time and determine their precise location. For example, if they're on a crash course towards each other, they could take those 4 different receivers, or they could take that receiver and look at those 4 different satellites and make sure that the position of those have changed so that they don't crash into each other. Now, the reason that we have GPS system, there's 3 different factors that we use GPS for. Number 1, predominantly we use it as in citizens, we use it for navigation to determine where you're going. You'll notice, like in your car, if you are using a GPS in your car, not on your phone, but in your car, like a TomTom or something, if you go under a bridge or if you go under a tunnel, in a tunnel, you'll lose that reception because you're losing the reception from the satellite to your device. Now, it's also used, GPS is also used to create accurate digital maps. Okay, like Google Maps. Okay, this could be used by countries, by citizens. It can be used in a wide variety of ways. We also use GPS to code precise locations of things, maybe positions of buildings, maybe if we're looking at other militaries, which are not supposed to be, but say we are, maybe we can precisely locate those various elements, like the Cuban Missile Crisis in our history with JFK. Okay, we were tracking and pinpointing the precise locations of those warheads as they were going from Russia to Cuba, and that was by using GPS. All right. Your third key term, your key objective for today is just miscellaneous concepts. I told you in Unit 1 there's a lot of random key concepts that we're going to apply to all the units. The ones that I couldn't fit together in a section, I just put on Section 3, miscellaneous key concepts. And there's 3 that I need to go over that we haven't touched on yet. The first is environmental determinism. Humboldt and Ritter, they created this idea of environmental determinism, and they said that the environment determined, or the environment caused, social development. So the environment directly influenced how developed a society was, or how a society developed along its way. The environment determined that. Another key term that goes right along with environmental determinism, kind of on the flip side, is possibilism. Okay? This is where it says environment may limit human actions, but people adjust to the environment. So the environment doesn't necessarily cause social development according to possibilism. It can limit it, but humans essentially adjust to the environment, and that's how they make their changes. And then finally, again, hitting on it once again, we've got models. I talked about this in the first section of notes, but models are simplified abstractions of reality that are structured to clarify causal relationships. Okay, it's important for you to get down that definition. We are going to apply the specific models later in each of the different units, but that's why we have models. Okay, those geographers that we talked about earlier use those to simplify all this data and to show it visually. You should be proud of me because I am right on time.